at the District Service Center in Cottage Grove, Minnesota. 1.0 is our roll call.
Present. Heather Hirsch.
Present.
Michelle Whitty.
Here.
Katie Schwartz.
Here.
Jeremy Laird.
Here.
Tom Gaff.
Here.
Here. 2.0, please stand and join us for Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 3.0 is the approval of our agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
It's moved by Sharon, a second by Pat. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 4.0 are our district highlights, and Assistant Superintendent Julie Nielsen will have an introduction for us.
Good evening, Chair Brunette, School Board Member, Superintendent Jacobus. I am pleased to bring forward Tony Mosier, who is the newest elementary principal at Woodbury Elementary School. I happened to be at his staff meeting, and just so that you know, he's only been on the job 14 days, and it's actually the easiest time of the year to be on, right? 14 days. And he was greeting his new staff, and I know that he had done his homework behind the scenes, getting to know their faces and trying to recognize their names from pictures. But when he stood up in front of the group for the first time, he thought he might throw up. But he asked that if he throws up and goes down, just continue the PowerPoint and keep on learning. And so we're excited to welcome him to a new role. He was at Lake Middle School as an assistant principal, where he was in the school district since 2015. So join me in welcoming and congratulating Tony.
I'd just like to say, thank you so much for the opportunity to lead in this district. I've learned so much from the leadership and being able to work with such dynamic people. And the 14 days, it's been blissful. I've got to bask in the exuberance of the kindergartners and the students coming in for our assessment days. The staff and the community has been very welcoming, and I'm just very, very proud to be a part of it. So thank you.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
5.0 is public comment. At this time, individuals may speak to the school board on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. The board will not respond to or discuss your comments. Character abuse or specific complaints identifying staff, students, or task force members will not be permitted. The superintendent may be asked to prepare a response to your concern. Our policy allows for 3 minutes, and we do not have anyone signed up this evening thus far, but if anyone's interested, they can approach the board at this time. All right, seeing none, we'll move on to our consent items. 6.0, all consent items are considered routine and non-controversial by the school board and will be approved by a single motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items, but prior to the meeting, board members did have the opportunity to review these items and may have requested that one be moved to an action item. And since we do not have that this evening, I will entertain a motion to approve our consent items.
It's
It's moved by Sharon and second by Katie. Wow, I was thinking it was one of you two. All right.
Jamie can't quite hear you. I don't know if it's the mic volume or us.
I'm being quiet? Oh my goodness. Okay, I'll be louder. Okay. Oh, you all had to put your mics down. It's not me. It's you guys. See?
Sorry.
Okay. And tonight we'll have Ron mention our gifts.
All right, thank you, Tracy. Again, one of the items that we approve within our consent agenda is 6.6, and that's the resolution to accept those gifts. This, in our first month of the new school year, we had over $72,370 donated. And again, we certainly appreciate those generous donations, but we also look forward to all those folks that volunteer their time within the district too. So at the end of the board meeting, we do run quote unquote the credits. So you get to see the folks that generously donated. If you see them in the community for us, please stop by or please stop them and thank them for the school district and for all the kids of 833.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 7.0 are workshop items, which will be on our agenda September 12th. 8.0 are information items, and 8.1 is a professional development update with our Director of Teaching and Learning Services, Kelly Jansen.
Good evening, Chair Brunette, board members, Dr. Jacobus. My role tonight was to introduce James McGee, but unfortunately James had a death in his family and isn't able to be here this evening. But I think we've met enough and he's been keeping me in the loop, so I'm gonna do my best to fill his shoes. They're probably Air Jordans, if you know James, that's what he wears every day. My goal is to give you an overview of the professional development that our staff has participated in preparation for the school year, and also to show you how they align with our strategic objectives of personalization and climate and culture. As you may or may not know, Avid Summer Institutes are put on by Avid, and we were fortunate enough a few years ago that they decided to hold one in Minneapolis. And so it's a huge event at the Minneapolis Convention Center, and this year we were able to send 41 teachers, 6 administrators, and 8 student leaders. And actually one of our schools was able to have students on a panel at this national conference and have them speak of their experiences with Avid. So it was very, very cool and an amazing opportunity for them to participate with educators from around the world. We also tried something new this year. Our goal was really trying to personalize professional development. We're asking our teachers to personalize for teachers, so we're trying to personalize professional development and meet them where they are. So we tried something new this year and offered a tech camp or technology camp where they were able to come for 2 days and work with the guidance of tech coaches and expert teachers in tech. And we had 4 days and we had over 200 teachers that came during that time, and those days were facilitated and planned by Ed Harkness, Aaron Bigler, and Joni Quinavale in their amazing opportunities. It was a short session of here's what this can do and then go work. And you could attend the sessions or not, but as I walked around Oldman, there was just a lot of amazing conversations and learning happening, and it truly was putting the power back in our teachers' hands to do what they needed to do. We also held our Probationary Teacher Academy the week of August 13th, and that involves some professional development, some learning about implementation things, and also a teacher breakfast co-sponsored by the Teachers Union and the district. And there were 79 new teachers, over 200 probationary teachers, and then even many veteran teachers chose to come to some of the professional development sessions that happened during the week. You can see the various topics there. I was fortunate enough to be sitting at the new teacher Altman table for the morning breakfast, and there was someone who had come from a different district. It wasn't her first year in teaching, and she said, I can tell you that this was not the norm in the other districts that I've been in, and this is a very nice way to welcome new staff. So kudos to the district for that, planning that. We also then this year tried to personalize the opportunity for board credits. And this is the first time that we have done it, and there were multiple groups that under the guidance of an administrator designed their own professional development this summer. And so we had some groups working in reading recovery, CLRT, or culturally and linguistically responsive teaching, and then a couple book studies. So the We Got This by Cornelius Minor and Lost at School by Ross Green. We also heard at the SIP planning that you'll hear from Brian about the Woodbury Middle School's book study, and they did a lot of books on social justice and just had meetings and amazing conversations about how they can support kids through that lens. The other professional development I want to share with you tonight is an opportunity that our administrators are participating in. It's the Courageous Conversations or Courageous Leadership Institute. It's through the University of Minnesota Mankato. And it is, this year we are sending our second cohort. We have 12 principals and district leaders. Last year we sent a cohort of principals and district leaders as well. You participate in PD multiple times. I believe there's 10 sessions throughout the year, and it's really focused on racial equity and public education and how, as a leader, do you lead these conversations in your schools. The first kickoff event for this cohort was August 15th and 16th, and they participated in an event called Beyond Diversity. It's a very emotional journey into who you are and who are the people around you. it was a wonderful opportunity. I went through it a few years ago, and I know this group had a lot of positive feedback coming back. These two groups then are going to be, and even specifically the cohort 1, are going to be the groups that will really be the champion team for planning equity for all of our system and systems leaders. So as we look at the systems leaders meetings and things that we're doing throughout the year, this group will be taking things that we learn in there and transferring to the other system leaders. So truly a train the trainer model focused in equity. As we look forward to this year, there will be, as I mentioned, district-wide equity training for all licensed staff. James McGee has been working in partnership with our new Director of Achievement and Integration, Corey Thompson. They've been meeting regularly and trying to plan and align, get us on that same path, and meet us where we are. So that's what they've been working on. We also are looking to bring in all employees into the fold, and the front, we've done a lot with it, as you saw those parts of the strategic plan, and James and Corey are working with Kevin Witherspoon on the frontline professional groups and making sure that that is aligned to our plan and our equity work as well. We are continuing the CLRT cohorts with Dr. Holly. Those began a while ago, and we have some new schools that are going to be trained. We had a few that did Jumpstart. We have a few that are going to do the Jumpstart in October as well. And a note, you know, the district's been doing this for a long time, and now the licensing board has added cultural competence to a requirement for relicensure. So in addition to everything that we're doing and everything that would qualify, we're also going to put together some online courses to support teachers for that licensure requirement as well. That is it. Do you have any questions? And I'll do my best, but as you know, this was the first of a restructuring year. We were able to restructure some things in teaching and learning and put professional development in teaching and learning. And so if I don't have the answer, I'm sure Brian Booth does, because he has done a lot with this over the last few years, but happy to entertain any questions.
I'm just curious in how all of these different trainings are now being reflected. Like, what would we expect to see in the building or in the classroom over this next school year as a result of these trainings and this work?
Right. So, you know, the goal would certainly be that personalization, knowing each kid, knowing what each kid needs, and knowing how to meet those needs. And then I think a thing we're kind of also taking a step back maybe, but stressing is, why is this important? And so having teachers not only with their head and their words, but with their heart, thinking that this is how I want my classroom to be, which can lead to that positive climate and culture as well. So that's our goal. We are doing some walkthroughs, so some, you know, checklists of here are some of the strategies we can see, and then having conversations with teachers about what we're seeing and what they're seeing and feeling. So that's what we're hoping to see. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just have a comment. You are doing excellent work, and I'm really proud of you and your staff, because what an opportunity for our teachers.
Yeah.
A slate of wonderful classes and choices. It's
Yeah.
just wonderful.
Well,
Great
thank you.
job.
Well, it's not me. It's certainly a wonderful
Yeah,
team
I understand.
that we work with, and James has really, I'm hopeful he'll get in front of you soon. He has really jumped in and done a nice job with professional development and really focusing and honing in and making people feel like it's for them. Yep.
So Pelsby,
Yeah.
so for the public to say what that is, and then,
I knew someone was going to ask me
yeah,
that. Professional Educator Licensing Standards
Board, yep.
Yeah.
And so when you say relicensure requirements, do you know, like, so it's not,
So there's a number of credits that teachers need to get in that 5-year period, or even administrators. There's the certain number. I think it's around 120.
okay.
Yeah, Marty, you want to come on? And so within those credits, there are some specific requirements like mental health.
So everyone, all teachers and
Yep.
licensed professionals need to get,
For the most part, there is a caveat on some, like counselors don't need certain ones and administrative, but for the most part, and I think they're up to 7 requirements now?
I think it's actually down to 6.
6. So it was close. Yeah.
okay.
And I actually started on the board there last year, on Pelsby board.
Okay.
So,
Well, I didn't hear
I'm trying not to chime in.
Help a girl out.
Kelly knows what she's talking about.
So I just think it's great. I mean, I guess it seems that that's a
Yeah.
really good way for teachers who, you know, while we have things mandatory, it's a good way for everyone to want to participate in the learning.
Absolutely.
And to make the best use of, you know, this investment that we've made. So that's
Right.
great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And at some point, I hope we look at unconscious bias and then putting our theories into practice. And I commend Kevin on his attempt to, you're doing well, Kevin, that's nice now, to make sure that the classroom reflects our community at some point. We need to really work on that continuously.
I would just add that those two specific unconscious bias and how that reflects is specific in our systems leaders PD this year. So, yep, that's a carryover from that courageous leadership. So, you're way ahead of us.
Seems like you're on the right track and it's full speed ahead.
Yes, it is full speed ahead, that's for sure. And this district, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. It's really, there's so many great things happening, and it's a joy to walk around and see. So, thank you.
Thank you. 8.2, School Improvement Plans. Our Director of Continuous Improvement and Assessment, Brian Booth.
Good evening, Board Chair Brunette, board members, Dr. Jacobus. I think the timing of this presentation right after Kelly's presentation, I think actually goes very well together. And to get to Heather's question, the so what? We're doing all these great things, but to what end? And so that's where the partnership between departments and working with our school leaders, we've spent the last few weeks working with all of our schools on something we call school improvement planning. So I'm here to provide an update on what we do and how that works and how it will impact students and staff. So a school improvement plan is a way for a school to create a roadmap to improve, either academically or within climate and culture. It is a specific action plan that teachers and principals will build together and set goals and targets. This year we pulled every leader together in the system, and we met at Oltman Middle School. Dr. Jacobus had the opportunity to address all of our staff members and talk about the strategic plan. We're moving into year 4, as you are aware. He had an opportunity to address the objectives within that, but then really to give us, I think, quite a passionate plea about how we need to ensure that we're focused on equity. And he put a challenge before all of the leaders in the room to make sure that we lead with our hearts but manage with our heads. And I think that set a really great positive tone for us of compassion and empathy for our students as they're getting ready to walk in our door next week. Dr. Jacobus also went over our guiding change document that we've been using a little bit when it comes to the strategic plan and where we're moving as a system. We spent a lot of time talking about the why of equity work, why it's important. We asked the staff in the room to answer a survey question about that, and then we were able to take those, and if you've seen those word clouds, this is the result of the responses from all the teachers and principals that were in the room. What's great is the number one word that popped up, of course, is student. But you'll see other key words in there, such as opportunity, education, achievement, successful. And so the energy in the room that morning was, I think, very positive and a good way for us to kick off the year as they were building towards school improvement planning. This is a picture from that day. What's great is it's also an opportunity for us to evaluate student engagement. And so if you notice closely in the front row, one of the assistant superintendents is on their devices during the presentation. But the teacher at the time was me, so I can understand the student engagement was low. It's fine. It's okay. I'm sorry. Okay, she was filling out the survey, maybe, is what she was doing. I'm sorry. I realized that as I looked afterwards on the picture. I was like, oh, poor Christine. Okay. I know, that was the point. I wanted to have some fun with it. Okay. And so One of the areas that we asked our staff to focus in on when it comes to goal setting was the North Star achievement data. And we've presented on this before. MDE released that information today, and so in a future board meeting, you'll get an opportunity to hear all kinds of numbers. But what we asked of our schools was to think about the data within this. The report card information was published today, and it covers kind of 5 key areas. We're looking at the proficiency results from our statewide standardized tests. Academic progress, so looking at students, how they progress in the system year after year on those academic tests. There are measures within our access test for our English learners. Each student is given a target, a goal target on the access test, and then how many of your students are meeting their growth target is a measure. We look at graduation rate, and then we look at consistent attendance. But we also looked at, and we challenged them to think differently about climate and culture. Minnesota Student Survey data is something that we've talked about multiple times, and our staff climate and culture data that we've addressed at the previous board meeting. And so what we asked our staff to do in their school improvement plan is to set a goal, and we use a simple formula. We will do X and Y so that. And so you have to name it. So to Heather's question, when you asked Kelly during the previous presentation, you're doing this, so what happens? What's the end result? And this is where we can start to get measurable. And what we talk about with our leaders is don't just measure the result, measure your implementation. Are you doing what you said you were going to do? And so the formula looks something like this. This would be an example of the type of goal a school might set. So we will participate in the CLRT training and coaching and conduct 50 walkthroughs using the CLRT walkthrough form so that, and then they can find a measure that they believe that will impact. In this case, just as an example, I use consistent attendance. If you have more engaging classrooms that are culturally responsive to the students, likely your attendance is going to go up. Kids are going to be more engaged. That is a way for us to measure our engagement. Now, it doesn't have to be that they're measuring that. We give them that option. But I wanted you to see that formula of what we're asking our schools to do. And so we asked them to set a goal in climate and culture and a goal in personalization to match our strategic plan. We wanted to have alignment there. And so then what we've done over the last couple of weeks, it's been a fascinating couple of weeks for us as cabinet members. We invited each school to come in and share for about 25 minutes their initial thinking about their school improvement plan. We've never done this before. Kelly has done this in Winona before and found it to be incredibly successful, and so we modeled off of that and brought it here. And so the schools came in and shared. We asked them 5 guiding questions. They weren't allowed PowerPoints, even though PowerPoints can be amazing. They weren't allowed that, and it was an opportunity just to have a conversation. And so all of us as cabinet had the opportunity to listen. And then we invited other staff members from other areas. Our Kids Club staff was here, and they listened to every presentation because they're trying to align their work to the school improvement plans of our schools. And I thought that was just a fantastic. Our transportation director came for a little while. Kwame was here for a little while. Wendy Tracy came and listened, or Wendy, is it Peterson now, right? And so everybody in the system had an opportunity to hear what our schools are thinking about for a school improvement plan. And it was just a really positive couple of days and a good way for us to kind of kick off the year. So, with that, do you have any questions?
Michelle?
Yep. Well, it's a good thing that James McGee could, finally provide some leadership.
Thank you. Yes, I agree.
So thank you for kicking it off and giving it over to him so beautifully.
I appreciate that.
packaged.
Thank you. Yes.
I am wondering, with our CLRT, do we include anything with regards to LGBTQ kids, or are we pretty much all within a cultural framework of kids of color? Or
I mean, I don't know that I'm the best to respond to that.
Yep. Okay. Yep. Just something to keep in
Yeah,
there.
I think, I guess, so to echo Christine's, I think the direct point right now is definitely there's a focus on race.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that, and so for example, the Woodbury Middle School book study that Kelly mentioned, it was on social justice, and included in that were books on LGBTQ communities and how that impacts our classrooms. And so, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
right, 8.3, our Finance Director, Dan Pyan, will give us a financial update.
Good evening, Chair Burnett, members of the school board, Superintendent Jacobus. I'm here tonight to give you our monthly financial update, and tonight we'll focus on a budget update. I have been informed I have an extra 15 minutes tonight, so that's always good, right? No. Well, that's okay. I just read this one the other day. This guy was in a bar, he leaned over and said to a guy, "You want to hear an accountant joke?" And the guy says, "Well, I'm 6'2", 240 pounds, and I'm an accountant, and this guy next to me is 6'4", 260 pounds, and he's an accountant too. Do you still want to tell that joke?" And the guy says, "Nah, I don't want to try to explain it twice." So with this time of year, we look a lot at enrollment for various reasons. The main reason is to make sure that we have enough teachers to staff the number of students we have. For me, I like to look at it, to see how we're doing based on budget, because if we don't have enough enrollment, if we budget too much enrollment, we will run out of money eventually because we won't have the revenue coming in. So it's turned into, we sit there in the back office and watch the enrollment numbers like we're looking at a stock ticker. We're constantly looking at it, but as of Friday, last time we did this for CFAC, the student count was 18,735. Now that's K through 12. We have a little bit different numbers when we throw some of the special preschool numbers in there for voluntary pre-K and school readiness plus, and you throw those numbers in there, and then we're almost to 19,000. But as far as what I budgeted for K through 12, we're about 250 ahead of budget right now. This number actually has increased 12 since the last time CFAC met, but I generally don't get too excited about the numbers. I get excited about them, but I don't like to use them too much until at least mid-September, just because a lot of the students that maybe have left us, we really don't know until the other district tells us that they're there. But so far the enrollment's been looking really good. It's been looking really up. As far as financially, how we did last year and the way it's looking, we have so far, our revenues will come in at budget. They're about 93% right now for 18-19. That's mainly because the state withholds the payments until all the way through October. So we'll recognize those as a receivable, and the revenues will be good. So really what we like to do is focus on the expenditures to see how we did. Now we got everything should be in now. All the teacher payroll has been accrued. There's a few more entries to make, some chargebacks and a pension entry. But we're looking at that the salary and wages budget came in at 99.25% of budget. So kudos to Chris Blackburn and Manuela Brown, who do most of the wage budgeting. I mean, to come, a $139 million budget to be within $4,000. I mean, that's less than one FTE. And our benefit came in at about 0.68% above budget. That will actually come down a little bit because we'll do some chargebacks of those benefits out of there. And then we'll also do an entry for health insurance implied entry. Services are coming in a little higher. Some of that's due to long-term facility maintenance. Otherwise, the other expenses are coming in pretty good. So if we can hold forward at this, we know revenues will come in okay. It's really just the expenditures. If we can keep those a couple million underneath budget, then that'll be a little bonus for our fund balance. As you remember, next year's budget includes revenues of $249,240,739, which is about a 3.4% increase over the previous year. and expenses about a little bit more than that, about 1.1 million more than revenues. That's about a 4% increase. As we just talked about enrollment, how it drives the budget, we don't have to look at all these lines in here, but basically this is the method we use to budget our enrollment, and we use a simple cohort survival method. As we talk to demographers and get different methods of doing things in generation rates, I don't generally use those only because I want to stay as conservative as I possibly can. As you can see, the 1920 budget, we have budgeted 18,537 ADMs, and like I said, right now we're about 18,735 at the moment. So as long as we can keep that number above the 18,537, we should be in pretty good shape. Just a chart to show you the progression of our enrollment. Enrollment is looking good for next year, and then based on some of the things that we've learned as the demographer is giving you some more information, it looks like it should be increasing even more based on housing developments and the generation rate of the homes in Woodbury and Cottage Grove. Our general fund, as you know, we basically try to keep it pretty balanced. We had a little bit more expenses over the previous years than we had revenues. We balanced it up a couple of years ago, and this year we're about 1.1 million off, and hopefully that we can bring that in better. As you can see, the progression of the revenues and expenditures, and mainly due to increasing costs, obviously, of cost of living, but also increasing enrollment. We do, even in the average years, and this is going to be more than average year, we do increase about 100 students a year. So it comes down to what are we looking at for fund balance. Now this chart shows the history. It shows what we're projecting for 2019, an increase of about $700,000. Hopefully that'll come in a little better than that. Once again, this is conservative. We'd really like to get back up to the $10 million mark. We're still a long ways away from the floor of our fund balance policy, which be about $12.5 million. And we got to get up to that policy as for lots of reasons, security, but also things like bond ratings. If we can get our bond rating up, we can save a lot of interest for the taxpayers, things like that. The 2020 projected budget based on the enrollment numbers right now, and we did add some additional staff so far to pick up some of the additional enrollment numbers, but we're projecting that at about 9.3 million. But as you know, if we increase our beginning balance for 19, that should naturally increase our fund balance for 2020. So really, what do we need to look at as we project fund balances and as we try to increase that fund balance to at least the policy numbers, and how do we get there? Some of the financial considerations we need to look at are obviously contract settlements. All contracts impact the budget and the district's financial standing more than any other school board action. Well, and you know why. I mean, our budget's $250 million and our total salaries and wages are $195 million. So it's most of your expense by far. So any kind of settlements or decisions on pay is going to affect your fund balance. Just for an example, if we took all our 18-19 wages and benefits, 2% on those, it's about $3.8 million, $3.9 million. If you're looking at a 2-year cost, you need to add the first year twice and then add the third year. So it's about 3.9 twice, and then if we put that new money on top of the 194, multiply that by 2%, you get $3.962 million. So just 2% on all the salaries and wages in this district, just 2% total package. I mean, that includes any kind of increase at all. Over 2 years costs about $11.7 million. We also have other expenses that we have to look at all the time, and I just wanted to go through some of those just so you and the public and everybody gets an idea of what we're dealing with every day too, besides just salaries and wages. So we'll take the 18-19 costs and just assume that they're going to go up 2%, which, as you know, with inflation, Gasoline, that goes up and down like a yo-yo. You never know. 2%. Health insurance, does that stay at 2%? Not all the time. But even at 2%, if our supplies went up by 2%, and Kelly would know as she looks at her textbook budgets and things like that and what they go up every year, sometimes just because they can. Well, we spend about $8.5 million in supplies a year. If they go up 2%, that will cost over 2 years $514,000. Electricity, we spend about $3.6 million a year on electricity. That cost over 2 years at 2% is $217,000. Tuitions. A lot of that will go back to other districts and into 916, and those amounts, it really is based on the amount of services people get, but that also includes any cost that those vendors pass on back to us. So if those went up 2%, that's $146,000. Natural gas, we spend about $1.3 million on that a year. That's about $80,000 over 2 years. We spend about $1.159 million on repair services, $70,000. Property and liability insurance, we spend about $800,000 a year. If that goes up 2%, that's another $38,000 over 2 years. Trash removal, $300,000 a year we spend. Water, $280,000. That's $16,000. So just with these categories alone, and it covers most everything, the whole supply budget's in there. There's some other services we pay for, but hopefully we can keep those flat. But just those costs alone over 2 years, if they go up 2%, is $1.1 million. So if we look at the increased cost of wages over 2 years, $11.7 million, and the increased supplies and services over 2 years, $1.1 million. It's so over 2 million over 2 years at 2% on all those categories, and 2% is not a lot, as you know. This increases our expenses about $12.8 million. So you say, well, so what? What does that mean? Well, let's look at our revenues. So the latest state legislation was 2% increase on the formula for 2 years. Now that's on the basic formula, which is not all of our revenue. We get about 127, based on flat enrollment. Now enrollment will pick up the revenue a little bit, but based on, we get $127.7 million in state aid basic formula revenue. At 2%, that's about $2.55 million. The next year, it'll increase another 2%. That's $130 million, and that's $2.6 million. So that's the increases we'll get in state basic formula revenue. About 7.7 over 2 years. We also get special education state aid, and that's dependent a lot about how much you spend and different formulas, and there's caps and this and that. But we'll get about $4 million over the next 2 years in increased special education state aid. And then we have a new category called special education cross subsidy aid that has a staggered formula, but that's also based on what your cross subsidy was the year before. So the higher it is, the more aid you'll get. But based on what our cross subsidy was before, that would bring in about, we know based on the formula that we got, that's about $1.9 million over 2 years. So that gives us new revenue over 2 years, about $13.639 million.
Dan, quick question. Did we get the total special ed state aid or the cross-subsidy aid prior years, or this was just new to this legislation?
We've always gotten special education aid.
Yeah.
I just looked at what the increase was going to be.
What the increase would be.
Yeah, these are basic. The cross-subsidy is brand new.
That's the new one?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's also federal aids that come in for special ed, but the federal dollars have stayed really, in fact, they've gone down a little bit with sequestering. So with the new revenue about 3.6 and the new expenses is about 12.8, it really leaves about $800,000 to handle emergencies. Things like if we don't have the reserves ready, a boiler goes out, that's $400 grand right there. Just little things can just nick at you. Or else to increase the fund balance. So, and if this was to increase the fund balance at this rate, it would take us 8 years to get to 5%. So these are just the realities I just wanted to explain. And we've said it for years. I mean, to be political about it, 2% was not enough. And we tried to tell them that 2% is not going to do it. This stuff, even if you increase everything else 2%, you're not going to gain enough ground. But once again, that's what we have, and the special education cross subsidy has helped a lot. But that's kind of where we're at right now, as we're looking for the next, as I'm looking at 2-year cycles. So that's really $800,000 gain over 2 years, $400,000 a year average. We are currently negotiating with 4 collective bargaining group, the teachers group, the bus drivers, OPU, there's a clerical unit, and the principal unit. With that, I want to entertain any questions, and I thank you for your attention.
Well, I know I had one quick question. So if the projected fund balance 9.4 at the end of 2020, or June 2020, so how many days or how much will that cover?
I have to do the math in my head, but it's a week and a half, maybe.
So not a lot of cushion, obviously. All right, thank you.
I mean, it is, you're thinking of all of us who campaigned for 3 and 3, worked hard for 3 and 3, and got 2 and 2. But to see the special ed cross subsidy aid, almost $2 million, that is, whew. Just thinking about all of everybody who worked hard for that, which it's a drop in the bucket, but it makes a difference in the big thing. Our cross subsidy are we still sitting around 17?
Yeah, I mean, the last one that's actually calculated was for the year 2017, but we can do our own calcs and somewhere around $17 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just the bottom line math of.
Yeah, and I think it will probably go up a little bit more because we did try to, get as fully staffed as we could in special ed, so we did add quite a few positions this year in this next year's budget. But we really won't see those numbers come through because they're always a couple years behind. So you're kind of also, playing the cash game with them too, because they really don't reimburse us until for expenses that are 2 years old.
Right. This is great, thanks. It was a great overview.
You're welcome.
Very simple to.
So, and one question would be, when we passed our last operating referendum, we went to the max. How much with the latest legislative session that just ended, did that go up at all? Because I know the only thing we didn't elect to do was to bring in the inflationary part of that, but did that go up to where we can look at a
The cap has increased. I think the last I looked, I believe we're about $180 per pupil unit below the cap.
Okay, thanks.
Will you or Dana maybe add this to will it get posted with the rest of the materials, your presentation? It is. Thank you, Dana.
That was kind of a weak question, Heather. I mean, come on.
Okay. Okay. Do you want to tell me how much the $180 per student cap is with our new enrollment numbers, Dan? Come on.
$3,375,000.
That was good. I was
There we
curious.
go.
But I can do
Just did the
math. I went to Park. I can do that math.
3 million.
All right, any other questions? Yeah, thank you. That format was great to see how it all equates. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right, 8.4 is a summary of our superintendent's evaluation. So on August 15th, the board held a closed session to conduct an informal evaluation for Superintendent Keith Jacobus. All agreed his communication is strong, He has the crucial conversations needed for improvement. We appreciate that each month Dr. Jacobus meets with individual board members where we can have discussions and express concerns on a more frequent basis. There was one concern that maybe he should delegate more and is potentially taking on too much himself. Another comment was Keith works collaboratively and is always respectful. Keith will set personal goals that will focus on our strategic plan and how to increase the results of specific subgroups where we have not seen the progress we have desired. Lastly, the board agreed that we would like to have a more formal system used for our next evaluation, and we'll work with board members to figure out which tool we will use moving forward. Overall, the evaluation was very positive, and we appreciate his forward thinking and leadership of the district. Thank you. Any other comments or no?
No.
Okay. All right, 8.5 is our negotiations update, and Katie Schwartz will give our update.
Okay, so South Washington County Schools is committed to providing regular updates for the collective bargaining agreement negotiations with the United Teachers of South Washington County. The district and UTSWC share a common interest, the success of all students, and we are committed to working together to reach an agreement that will benefit our students and those who contribute to their success. Negotiation committee members from District 833 and UTSWC met for the 10th time on August 21st, 2019. The session focused on financial counterproposals from UTSWC. In the next scheduled session, the district will propose its financial package to for the union's consideration. Negotiations between both committees are progressing positively, and both sides have stated they are committed to coming to an agreement in the near future. 2 more negotiation dates were set for September 3rd and 17th. An update on the September 3rd meeting will be reported at the September 12th school board meeting. The district will also continue to provide regular updates as the negotiation discussions proceed on our website at www.sowashco.org under the school board section.
Thank you. All right, 9.0 are discussion items. We don't have any this evening. 10.0 are action items. 10.1, Assistant Superintendent Mike Johnson will join us for different policies.
Good evening, Chair Brunette, board members, and Dr. Jacobus. The policies listed on the administrative report are required to be reviewed yearly. They've been cross-checked to reflect updates in Minnesota statute, definition of terms, legal references, and MSBA language. Board Policy Committee members Sharon Van Leer, Heather Hirsch, and Michelle Whitty had reviewed these policies and made recommendations to me prior to the first reading on August 15th. Administration wishes to gain approval this evening, and there were no changes in policies after the edits were made prior to our first reading. I'd like to thank the board for their time and effort in reviewing these, and I wish to defer to Chair Brunette for approval on the 9 policies.
All right, so if there is no objection, we will take one motion to approve all the policies.
So move.
Moved by Pat and second by Sharon. Any other questions, comments on any of the policies?
I think the only comment we talked about last time was matching the forms with the policies, and I saw that got updated. So, again, I will reiterate, it was a lot of policies, so I appreciate the work from you and the principals in putting all of that together, and Brian and Kelly.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 10.2 is the approval of Washington County easement resolution, and Dan Pine will join us one more time.
Thank you. I'm back again. Welcome again, or good evening again, everybody. Tonight, I just wanted to, Washington County has come to us and they want to ask the board to approve a couple of easements. One's temporary and one's permanent. Washington County is in need of this permanent and temporary easements for projects that are being completed on or near the intersection of Bailey Road and Wood Lane Drive in Woodbury. So that the answer to your question, what are they doing there? Well, they're gonna put a roundabout in, at, Wood Lane and Bailey. So they'll need to have some of our land, obviously, to finish out the roundabout part. And they also have to have a temporary one while they're working. And they also need to move our sign. So in the purchase price, they did include, we've been working with them on this, and they did get a guarantee from a contractor to move the sign. So they're paying for the whole expense of moving that sign because it will permanently be in the way once the roundabout is done. What else is going on with that project? Well, they're going to widen Bailey, ending up with 4 lanes with the roundabouts going. They're going to take one of the entrances off on the south side. There's 2 of them pretty close together if you go further down the road. They'll leave our entrance, our southern entrance, or it'd be our most easterly entrance. But that, we don't know how that's going to work or not with the buses. It's not going to be a controlled stop, but as the roundabout comes in and you're heading east, you know that if you ever notice, our buses go out onto Bailey on the east exit. Will the roundabout be better than the control light they have now? I don't know. Time will tell. If people will probably be coming faster, but we'll just have to work on that. What we're excited about is the safer road, obviously. All the students we have that live north of Bailey, they all get bused regardless of how close they are, just because it's not safe to cross there. And we don't anticipate it's going to be safe even with the roundabout there. However, they're going to put walking paths on both sides. There's nothing on the south side right now for a walking path. And once that's in, as it runs all the way down to Radio, I anticipate that the students that live south of Bailey that go to Bailey, south of Bailey Road that go to Bailey Elementary, eventually they'll be able to walk then. And then long term, just as we talked to the city about some other issues, they are talking about putting Hargis all the way to Wood Lane. It stops a little bit over by behind Jerry's there. So once that's put all the way to Wood Lane, because there should be a big development coming in between what's the development there, St. Teresa's and Bailey. There's a big cornfield right now that's going to be developed. So we'll have both a path on the top and on the bottom of Bailey, and that's going to really help with it. But that's a city project. The county project, they want to do it as soon as they can. I mean, it's scheduled for next year, so they'll start working in the spring of 2020 and expect to be done by the winter of 2020. And they will not close off any of our entrances, and they'll work closely with the school district to make sure that they're not disrupting traffic in and out as best they can, obviously. So they're just asking that, in a motion that you would approve the easement. They will pay $43,000 for the easement. That's why I'm asking if you approve it, unless you have any questions that we can answer or any issues with it. There should have been a photo map in your packet, and you can see what they're doing there. It'll be exciting once it's all done that we get those walking paths in, and it'll probably change a lot for us.
All right, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Michelle and second by Sharon. Any questions?
Well, I guess my biggest question is, do we truly feel $43,000 is right? I mean, looking through this, in the company that did this appraisal report, have they did this work in the past? Have we had any recommendations from them in the past that we feel good about this?
I'm not aware. I did check, the numbers they were using and the appraised values, and to me they look reasonable. I think kind of the biggest factor, it's not a big piece of land they're taking, and I think the big factor was that, we have to move that monument, the sign, and we're confident the number they gave us for that is good.
Do we need a roll call?
We don't have to have a resolution, a motion and extract of minutes is fine.
Okay. All right, so if there are no other questions, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
10.3, approval of request for proposal of scope and needs study for Central Park, Woodbury, and our Director of Community Ed, Bob Lawrence, will join us.
Good evening, Chairperson Burnett, Dr. Jacobus, members of the board. I am here with a cooperative funding agreement for the scope and needs study for Central Park. As you may know, Central Park is a multi-use indoor facility located in Woodbury. We've been partners in that facility since its inception and opening in 2002, so 17 years, and we're on a 20-year lease with first right of refusal for the space that we currently lease. Over the last couple of years, we've been working with the other partners, which include the City of Woodbury, the Washington County Library System, and the YMCA, who are the City of Woodbury and the Washington County own the facility. The YMCA owns the space that's connected, and we lease space in the lower level. And we've been looking ahead to what the growing needs in the community are, as the community has doubled since the opening in 2002. And so what this agreement is it's an agreement that we want to continue to move forward with them as part of that cooperative. It's not a binding agreement, because once we send out an RFP for the scope and sequence, when that comes back with a cost associated with it, and when we see what that looks like, we do have an option, as outlined in this agreement, to decide to not be part of that now. So what they're essentially looking for is just, are we still in? This is similar to the MOU that I brought forward 2 months ago with the City of Cottage Grove as they look ahead to a community center. They're just looking for our intent moving forward. It is good timing, as we are part of moving forward with our long-range facility study, because we're looking at our emerging needs. Currently, we have early learning programming offered at Central Park, and we have adult basic education offered. Those work really well in that setting, because there are so many other amenities and resources within that space. So when people go there, they often use the library, they might use the YMCA, and they come to class at the same time. So it's really convenient, and so I think there's a benefit for the district to continue to look forward and see what is possible. And along the way, I would continue to come back and give you updates on what I'm learning and what we're learning and what we intend to do. So what I'm looking for tonight is an approval of this cooperative funding agreement, so we can move forward.
All right, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Sharon, second by Katie. Any other questions?
Bob, you presented a plan to us a while back of the sort of scope of how long this process would take.
Yep.
Do you feel like we're still in line with that process?
Yep. We're on track. So we, a year ago, or 6 months ago, we finished up a planning process that looked more on how the agencies work together. It was less about the facility itself, and in that it said the next phase of that would be, over the next 3 to 5 years, a potential build out, which may be just a simple remodel, or it may be a new footprint altogether. So yeah, this is that next phase of that plan.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right, if there are no other questions, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. 11.0 is our reports and comments. 11.1 is our superintendent's report.
Thanks. As Dan mentioned, our enrollment changes day to day. Well, as of this morning, with ins and outs, we're at 18,999 kids. We had people coming in and out today, so tomorrow they'll reconcile any withdrawals we had with enrollment. But I think as we move into the long-term facilities, the first meeting talked about the demographic study, and our projections that we did in 2012-13 we're now seeing those numbers come in, and that makes this process just very timely. We'll have some reports, and then I wasn't prepared to report on that tonight, but we have our next meeting coming up. But it's exciting. I think we'll start over that 19,000 mark, but we do have kids in the system that we will not come back, but usually traditionally it hasn't been more across the system of more than 100. So I'm optimistic about the enrollment. So a couple updates as we get ready to welcome everyone back next week. Today was our ATTPS day. And that's at all sites. Our teachers that participate in the ATPPS program, they worked on their student achievement goals. They reviewed the SIP plans for their schools, the school improvement plans, and they created individual professional growth plans, and they planned their flexed day of professional development. All of this is focused on improvement for students and setting goals, and it's well monitored, as you know, and in the spring, the ATTPS committee looks at, did you reach your goal or not? And I've always been very impressed with that committee, how well and how strongly they hold everyone accountable to the goals that they set. So all these are fitting with our strategic plan again. So here's another example of tonight's presentations, how we're moving in the same direction toward our two objectives in the professional or in the strategic plan. I want to give you a technology update because we have a lot of things happening this summer, and we've had some questions about what we're doing with technology. So as a district, we have allowed students to bring their own devices to school for many years. However, one of the challenges that we have with students bringing any device into the classroom is monitoring what the student is doing with the device if they deviate from our lesson plan, and also ensuring that they are using our network because we have network filters if they're accessing the internet. From a district level, there are several methods in the classroom management or methods of classroom management of these devices that we have used. Specifically, all district networks, including our wireless and our guest networks, are content filtered per the Child Internet Protection Act. District iPads that are on any district network route, or if they're outside of our district and on any network, they're routed back into our network so they can still be content filtered when kids take them home and out of the system. Starting with the 2019-20 school year, all district-owned Chromebooks will be content filtered using a program called Go Guardian. We also use classroom management software that will be enhanced this year, and we added the Go Guardian teacher to the Chromebook. So we're adding Chromebooks at Eastridge and at Woodbury, and this Go Guardian allows a teacher to make sure that when they're conducting their lesson, that students can only be on that application. They can't be any place they want, along with those devices then have that monitoring and filtering. For the school year also, we're adding the following items to align with the district's strategic plan. We're refreshing and adding 1,400 iPads that'll be used in pre-K through 5th grade. Those iPads originally were brought down to the elementary from our middle and high school, and now they will be refreshed with new. We're adding 600 iPads to all of our schools for our special education students. 4,000 Chromebooks were purchased to add into the system. The life expectancy for these devices will be no more than 5 years because the Minnesota Department of Education requires that you can only have a device for as long as the warranty of the manufacturer is in place. What's important to understand is that the funding for all of this came from our 2017 voter-approved levy. So I've had some questions about why are we spending so much money on technology? Could you put it elsewhere? Well, we asked the voters, would you support the technology? And they said yes, and that's where this comes from. I've also had some questions about the why do we have to use the district's devices? Well, part of that is our educational tool. We don't use it all the time, but it's like a textbook. Even though we still want to allow kids to bring your own devices, when we're working in the classroom, we want them to use our device because of the software that we have to make sure that we're following the lesson and the content filtering. And I think it's a great example about saying we don't allow people to bring their own textbook in. So it's a learning tool. We don't use it all the time, but there's a number of questions of why, because I have a device I like. We still want kids to be able to use that if they want to write their paper on their own device, but in the classroom, we're asking that they use the devices that we're providing. So I want to give that update because I've had some questions, and I'm happy when I'm finished to answer any other questions. I want to move on to, you might have seen, we had a great story on school bus seat belts. So we're very proud to share that our school district has recently made the commitment to add shoulder seat belts to all of our general education school buses over the next decade or so. As we replace buses each year, we will buy buses with the shoulder seat belts. We believe we are among the first, if not the first school district in the state to make this commitment. We are also proud to say that we are doing this in a cost-effective way. While the added seatbelts are an additional cost, our transportation department has looked for ways to save money by reconfiguring other parts of the bus when we purchase buses, including changing the model of the engine that we are using. Additionally, we believe legislation requiring seatbelts on buses is just around the corner. In fact, the Minnesota State Senate has already introduced a version of that legislation after the National Transportation Safety Board urged all states to take action last year. We are grateful to all the people who have researched and looked at solutions to this issue, including Carrie Olson, our Director of Transportation, and Andy Smith, our Assistant Director of Transportation Operations. We are also excited to say that this story has been shared by local media, including the Bulletin and KSTP, and we have a short clip from KSTP that we'd like to share with you tonight to see the folks in live as far as the information.
To school while Minnesota parents get ready. The kids have to go back to class. One metro area district is working to make sure their trips to school are safer.
South Washington schools will start adding buses with seat belts to its fleet. Crystal Bowie joins us to explain why this will be a decade-long process. Crystal?
Paul and Jackie, although there are only 10 new buses, they're getting as much use out of them as possible. The buses with the seatbelt will be used for field trips, but also rotated through the elementary, middle school, and high school routes.
Kids are yelling, hey, little Johnny is getting out of his seat. And every time you take your eyes off the road, it's a huge safety concern.
But not anymore. The South Washington County School District has added 10 new school buses with seatbelts, which they say will not only help with safety, but it'll also help with behavioral management.
But really, we envision school transportation to look different. It's not going to be a chaotic situation with kids kind of jumping from the seat, turned around in their seat, or otherwise misbehaving, because they have that structure now of that's their designated spot and they should stay buckled up.
School buses with seatbelts cost about $10,000 more for the safety upgrade, but the school district switched out some of the diesel engines for a more modern gasoline engine. They say this will offset some of that cost.
I hate to say it, but it's that financial piece that districts face, and that's the toughest thing, to weigh safety and many other factors versus the cost.
Because seatbelts can't be added to old school buses because of the infrastructure, only the new buses bought by the district will have the seatbelts. So it will take about 10 years before every bus has a seatbelt.
I do think it's worth the cost. I think added safety and student management for our drivers absolutely is worth the cost.
But with the district's creative budgeting, the seatbelts end up costing about 1 penny per student per day. And the South Washington County school bus drivers are now trained on the new procedures. The training also includes practice drills so students know how to quickly take off their seatbelts in case of an emergency. Paul and Jackie?
Crystal, thank you.
That was a great story. I think Carrie and Andy did a great job of explaining, and we're excited to put them into our fleet this year.
Very cool. Thank you. All right, 12.0 future meeting dates. 12.1 September 12th is our regular board meeting, and September 26th is a regular board meeting. With that, we are adjourned.